All right, here we are moving on in section 4.2 now. I know it's a little bit odd because we did 4.3 first, and now we're going on to 4.2, slope-intercept form. So the big thing on this one is just think about what we've done so far. In 4.1, we graphed using slope-intercept form, and then we went on and we learned about point-slope form in 4.3, and now we're going to write equations. We've also done standard form back in chapter 3. So now we've kind of learned about all three equations, slope, intercept, point slope, and standard form. So now our objective here, as you can see, is to write an equation of a line given the slope and a point, or 2 points it might give us. And we're going to write it in whatever equation they want it in. So we'll go through those. So the first things we have to do here to do this, to write an equation of the line, is step 1, identify or find the slope. And again, we know there's multiple ways to do that. If you have 2 points, then use your slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. If you have a graph, then count using rise over run. Or you can make a table, changing y, changing x. Remember, there's plenty of ways to do that. Number 2, we're going to use point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 when we distribute there. There are other ways in which we can do this, but this is the easiest way, is to use point slope form. And we're not always going to keep it in point slope form. We're just going to start with it in point slope form, and then we may have to work and change things around and distribute and add and subtract and add additive inverse and stuff like that to get into the other equations, the other forms, slope, intercept, or standard form. But we're always going to start with point slope. Like I said, there's other ways to do it, but that's the easiest way, is to start with point slope and go from there. After that, we're going to substitute our m. Once we have it in point slope form, then we're going to substitute our m, our slope, and our point, x1, y1, into that point slope equation. And once we're done with that, then we can look for what form the answer should be in, and then distribute if we need to, if necessary. Okay? So what do they want the answer in? And it's probably going to be in one of these 3 forms. So here's point slope form again. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Again, the more you write it, the more you try to remember it and memorize it. Slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. And of course, if you remember standard form back from chapter 3, we started getting set on that one. ax plus by equals c. So it'll be one of those 3. So let's do some practice problems. We'll do like one of each, basically, and kind of teach you how to get this done. Okay, the first one says we're going to write an equation in point slope form. So again, that gives you the idea right there of what form the answer is going to be in. So our final answer will be in point slope form, and it passes through -4, 2, and has a slope of 3. Okay, so we already have a lot of information here. It says right here we got a slope of 3, so I know right off the bat my m value is 3. And then I've got a point they gave me here of -4, 2. That was the information that was given to us. And I also know that we had, this is basically a x1, y1, right? It's x1, y1. It's given to us right there. Okay, so if we want to use, that was step 1, was to identify the slope. Well, that was step 1. We identified the slope right there. It was 3. And then we're going to now use point slope form. Okay, so y minus y1, I don't like the way that looks. Y minus y1, don't like that either. Let's keep it in purple, that's fine. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, that's point slope. So that was step 2. And then step 3 is going to be to substitute our m and our x1, y1 into this equation. So when we do that, we are simply going to have y minus 2 equals our slope at m is 3, and then x minus a -4. So remember, that's going to make it a +4. Be careful with your symbols there. A -4 makes a +4. So we are done. We've got enough information. It's in point slope form already, and we're all set. That's kind of an easy one because all the information was given to us there, and it was pretty simple once we plugged in the answers. And they wanted it in point slope form. Let's do one that's not as easy. This one was pretty easy too because they give you a lot of information. They just want a slope-intercept. So let's skip 2 and come back to it, and we'll go with number 3. This one, they want the answer in standard form. So that'll be our final answer. It's got to be in standard form for a line that passes through 8, 2 with a slope of negative 3/4. So remember, our first step was to identify the slope. Well, it says it right here, slope of negative 3/4. So we've got that. We know our slope is negative 3/4. Second step was to use point slope form. So we're going to go ahead and go y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, using our slope, point slope form. And now let's plug in what we know. Okay, we've got a point, and if you remember, if you look at that point, we've got our 8 and 2, so this would be our x1, y1 up here. So we've got enough information to use slope-intercept, or excuse me, point slope form. So it's going to be y, if we keep going here now, let's go with y minus 2, because our y1 value is 2, equals our slope of negative 3/4, and then it's going to be x minus 8. Okay, so we're in point slope formula. That was the next step, was to use point slope, and step 3 was to substitute our m and our points into it, which we did. But now the last step is to put it into standard form. We've got some different problems here. Number 1, we've got a problem that we are not in standard form. We're in point slope form. And number 2, we've got some fractions. We've got some negatives that we're going to have to deal with. Okay, so let's go ahead and distribute first, and then we'll talk more about it. So if we distribute here, the y minus 2 is going to stay basically the same. And over here, we can distribute on the right-hand side. We're going to have to distribute here. 3/4 times x is negative 3/4 x. And then 3/4 times a negative 8 gives us a positive 6. Okay? But again, we're still in point slope form. We distributed. We're trying to rework it to get it into standard form, but we're in trouble still because we have fractions, and we've got this y minus 2 on the left-hand side. So let's try to get rid of the fractions first. And we can do that by, if we take, remember, multiply by the denominator here. So if I take everything on this side and multiply it by 4, and then I also have to take everything on this side and multiply it by 4, then I can at least get rid of some of that stuff. Okay? And so what that's going to end up doing now is we're going to distribute on the left-hand side. So distribute on the left-hand side, 4y. 4 times y is 4y. And then over here, 4 times negative 2 is going to be a negative 8. Equals, on this side now, 4 times the negative 3/4 is actually going to get rid of that denominator, so we're just going to have negative 3x. That's why we're doing it in the first place. That's why we're multiplying by that 4. And then 4 times 6 here is going to be 24. So we're moving along here, moving along. We've got rid of the fractions. And that step right here, like we said here, that was get rid of the fraction step. Because then we won't have to worry about those once we get into standard form. Remember, you can't have fractions for your a and b values. So this step here just helped us get rid of the fractions. Got rid of the fractions. And now we got to get it into standard form. That's our next thing. And remember, standard form now is ax plus by equals c. So we want to try to get it into standard form. And we've got to rework this equation a little bit. So I'm just going to draw our little line here, just like we did when we were solving equations back in the day, back in chapters 2, basically. Have the equal sign there, so we know we're working on both sides. So I know with standard form, I got to get my variables on the left. So I've got to get this negative 3x. I got to bring that over to the left-hand side. So to do that, I'm going to add 3x to both sides. And now I've got, on the left-hand side, I've got a 3x plus 4y minus 8 equals just the 24 over here on the right-hand side. So I've got my x and my y, but I've got number on the left-hand side too with this negative 8. I've got to bring that over to the other side. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides there. And that's going to end up giving me my final answer here of 3x, because these are going to cancel out, right? So I've got 3x plus 4y equals 32. Now if I look at this, my answer here, I've got it in the form of ax plus by equals c, 3x plus 4y equals 32. So that's a tricky problem. A lot of that gives people the most problems because number one, you have to get the information, generate the information of slope and the point, put it into point slope, and then change it into standard form. And that was tricky in two different ways because we had fractions here that we had to work with, and then we had to work it into standard form. So that's a tricky one, but if you just take it piece by piece, step by step, this is what we talked about, showing your work and doing step by step, you'll be just fine. And use this problem as an example as you go further in your notes. Okay, let's move on to the next one, number 4. We got some sneaky problems here. Okay, sneaky problems. And this sneaky problem, what they're asking for is to find slope-intercept form. We want to write the equation in slope-intercept form. So I'm circling that because you know your answer now is going to be in the form of y equals mx plus b. Okay, and they give us 2 points. Okay, well, our first step says we have to find m. So we can still do it if we use our step-by-step process. We've got to find our m. Well, can you find m if they give you 2 points? Sure you can. You can use the slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. They've given us 2 points. They didn't just give us a slope this time. So over here, this is your x1, y1. This is your x2, y2. So we're all set with our points. Now we can go ahead and find our slope here. And if I go, it's going to equal -2 minus 2 for my y's, and my x's would be 3 minus 1. If I go ahead and do that math here, -2 minus 2 is a -4. And on the bottom here, I've got 3 minus 1 is 2. When I simplify, that's going to give me a slope of -2. So I've got my slope. I've identified the slope. That was step 1. Okay, and remember, we want to eventually get it into y equals mx plus b form. But step 2 is to use point slope form. So I'm going to go ahead and write point slope form here. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And now I'm going to step 3 it. I'm going to substitute my m and my point in for it. Now I've got my m of -2, but notice I got 2 points here up top to choose from. I could use either one, and because I already labeled this one x1, y1, that's what I'm going to use for my x1 and y1 in here. I could actually use the other point, and you can always have your choice. Sometimes you just got to look at the numbers here and see which are the easiest to add or subtract or multiply. Some people like positives. And in this case, it's going to work out because we got 1 and 2. It's probably easier to deal with that than 3 than -2. But either way, I already labeled these x1, y1, so I'm going to use those points when we substitute them in. So my y value, it's going to end up being y minus 2, because I'm using that first point there. My m value, we already found the m is -2. And then I go at x minus 1. Sorry about that. All right. But now I want to get it into slope-intercept form. So I've got it in a point slope form. And this kind of is a little bit easier because if you think about y equals mx plus b, all I really have to do is get rid of this -2 here. And to do that, I basically just have to add 2 to both sides. Oh, you know what? First, I'm going to distribute. Let's distribute. It says distribute if necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute. So on the left side, it's going to stay the same, y minus 2. And then on the right side, I'm going to distribute. -2 times x is -2x. -2 times -1 is a positive 2. So now I'm in a situation where I'm almost in y equals mx plus b form. I'm almost in slope-intercept form. I've got a mx plus b on the right-hand side. I've just got to get rid of this y, this -2 over here. So if I add 2 to both sides, that easily does it for me. Now I've got y equals, because that's going to cancel, -2x plus 4. And now you can see I'm already in slope-intercept form. That's my final answer. So the sneaky part of that one is they only gave you 2 points, but you could still find the slope by using your slope formula. Okay, let's just look at a couple more sneaky problems. Not necessarily this one's kind of very similar, just one in slope-intercept form. How about another one? Write an equation in standard form for a line that passes through the x-intercept with a slope of 3. So in this one, They give you the slope of 3, or excuse me, -3. They give you that, but they didn't give you a point. Well, remember, our x-intercept is a point. Okay, so this is what we're talking about here is x and y-intercepts are coordinates on the graph. Remember that. Because if you have an x-intercept of 4, that means that this point is going to be over here, right here, but that does have coordinates. That coordinate would be 4, 0. 4 on x, 0 on y. That is my x-intercept. So x-intercepts and y-intercepts, remember, are coordinates on the graph. So now I would have my slope of -3, and I'd have a point now of 4, 0 to work with. So I could actually find this equation. I could do the problem because I have my slope, I have a point to work with. Not actually going to do it, just now you have the ability to do it. Let's go ahead and look at number 7. Number 7, write this equation with an x-intercept of 4 and a y-intercept of -2. Again, let's just draw a little sketch of the graph here. Your x-intercept would be at this point here, same one, 4, 0. And your y-intercept of -2 would be right here. And remember, those are coordinates on the graph. Okay? Our x-intercept here of 4, we use the same one we just used. It'd be 4, 0. And your y-intercept here would be 0, -2. Okay? 4, 0. Remember, you're going over 4 and down 0. And here you're going over 0 and down 2 to get your -2. So we got our points here. So now that I have coordinate points, I could just solve this problem as well because I have 2 points, so I could find the slope by using the slope formula, or I could use, since I sketched a little graph here, I could use rise over run to get my slope, and then I have points to choose for point slope formula, and then we could put it into something. And I'm going to just change this to slope-intercept just to give us something different. And that's normally what we would use, and I prefer slope-intercept over all the other ones. I don't usually use point slope form other than to solve it and put it in these other formulas. But so we can work on that at a different time. But that just shows you easy ways to solve those problems. Try those on your own if you'd like to. We'll probably do them in class and go over them as well. So that takes us to the end here, our lesson summary now. What are the 3 forms and equations that you can write a linear equation? Okay, so I need the form and the equation, the name of the form and then the actual equation. There's 3 of them, and it's in your notes. And then the practice problem here is to write this equation, y minus 5 equals 1/2 times x plus 6. Write it in slope-intercept form, and then also write it in standard form. And you should be able to tell what those ones are. But that does it for 4.2. We'll look forward to your questions, and we'll do some more practice on this tomorrow.